And the nation prepares for President Trump. Some of the country is still shell-shocked by the surprise upset victory of the Republican. But today, the idea of Donald Trump in the White House got a whole lot more real. His visit with the current occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue today was as stunning as it was symbolic. The president-elect sat with Barack Obama for a 90-minute conversation that marked the first time these two had ever met face-to-face. And it comes after President Obama, of course, said repeatedly that Trump cannot be trusted with the nation's nuclear codes. Afterwards, the two political foes sat side by side for an extraordinary Oval Office photo op. Here is that strange and historic moment.
Well, I just had the opportunity to have an excellent conversation with President-elect Trump. It was wide-ranging. We talked about some of the organizational issues in setting up a White House. We talked about foreign policy. We talked about domestic policy. I want to emphasize to you, Mr. President-elect, that we now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds.
We had never met each other. I have great respect. The meeting lasted for almost an hour and a half, and it could have, as far as I'm concerned, it could have gone on for a lot longer. We really, we discussed a lot of different situations, some wonderful and some difficulties. I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
The First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama, also met with the future First Lady, Melania Trump, and Vice President-elect Mike Pence, sitting down with Vice President Joe Biden. Late today, Trump was heading back to New York City. So, John, extraordinary moment. I'm wondering what you think of the Obama-Trump relationship right now.
Well, the first thing I have to say is, to be a fly on the wall at that meeting.
Or to interview the fly.
Yes, or to interview the fly.
That's a good get, the fly.
Either one. I thought, that obviously was the strangest thing. We were down there in Washington today. It's just, one of many strange things that have happened and surreal to watch, knowing the history of the two of them, knowing how much all the things that President Obama has said about Donald Trump, all the things that Donald Trump has said about Barack Obama. But I'm consistently impressed over the course of 8 years with the extent to which Barack Obama is genuinely committed to preserving democratic norms in this country. And his handling of this meeting, and I know we can talk about Trump's handling of it too, but just focusing on the president for now, his handling of the meeting was just, is a real testament to how much he cares about and takes seriously the notion that the transfer of power should not just be peaceful, but should be placid and should be smooth and should be, and I think he genuinely means it. A lot of things about Donald Trump he doesn't like, but he's now the president-elect, and he feels that everybody should be rooting for Donald Trump's success.
Hats off to President Obama. His statement yesterday to today was of the same spirit, and it's a requirement to the office, but he handled it in a way that was extraordinarily dignified and unifying. Donald Trump, as candidate, said, as president, I'm not going to do all this stuff that's a little bit out there. It's a different thing. That's political combat. As president, I'm not going to tweet in a crazy way. I'm not going to, lash out. You wouldn't recognize Donald Trump if you covered the campaign, the way he behaved today.
Yep.
And for those who are hoping that he's a different guy in the office, it's one data point, but he was low-key, dignified. He praised the president's record, said he was going to ask the president for advice.
Yeah.
And in a campaign that has been extraordinarily abnormal throughout, what they said, how they acted, was like every other meeting like this we've seen in our careers over the television era as a transition begins.
Yeah. And look, it's the case that I think that one of the things that happens when you become president, and we hear about this in a particular context usually, which is the context of when you first start getting the real security briefing and how that changes you.
Like that, different. You're a different person.
You suddenly are like,
you're in the club.
Right. You're like, okay, I said a lot of stuff on the campaign trail, but now I know what's actually going on, what the real threats are, what our agents in the field are confronting, and that changes you. I think, going and sitting in that chair is another thing that changes you, not to the core of who you are, because Donald Trump is still Donald Trump, just as Barack Obama is still Barack Obama. But that is a moment where suddenly it's like, okay, the weight and gravity of what's happened comes and hits you full force.
Yeah. Again, if you just saw that photo up and you hadn't covered the campaign and you just said this is the Republican president-elect, this is a Democratic president, you'd say, oh, looks good.
Well, and it wouldn't have been that different from if Jeb Bush had been. If Jeb Bush was now the president-elect, the very similar kind of meeting would have taken place, similar tone, temper, everything else. All right.